Today I'm going to talk about one of the most iconic horror franchises ever, and it was a nightmare to get through. Hey there, cinephiles. I'm going to rank the A Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, from the original 7 to Freddy vs. Jason to even the 2010 remake. Horror is still a major blind spot for me, so I wanted to take on one of the most iconic series in the genre. And my goodness, was this a long journey to find out how many bad outings Freddy has. Don't get me wrong, there are a couple of good Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but it's mostly been rough. But alright, that's enough chit chat. Let's get into my rankings for the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. In dead last, I have Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. The tagline for this is, they save the best for last. And just as this isn't the last time we see Freddy, it's also not the best time. Of all of the movies on this list, this is the one that seems most like a TV movie. From the wooden acting to the creativity being as dead as the title claims Freddy to be, it's just not a good time. It wasn't fun by any stretch of the imagination, and just adding more lore at this point, it was just agonizing. The reason that this is at the bottom of this list is because this movie was my breaking point for this franchise. It didn't even have any of the charm that came from the films prior to this. There's no good reason I can come up with for anyone else really watching this movie. In 8th place, I have A Nightmare on Elm Street, the 2010 reboot. It was the moment I saw Michael Bay as a producer on this that I knew I was in trouble. Unfortunately, this was one of those, we're gonna be so dark and edgy, and we're not gonna be like the first one. We're gonna be different because we're going to take ourselves seriously and strip away any of the fun that the original had. And my God, was it such a waste of my time. The sad part of this is too, I know some people who would prefer this to the original. And the only reason this isn't last place is because it doesn't look like a TV movie. But for this being a remake of the original, it doesn't improve on any aspect whatsoever. From the stuff that it tries to do differently than the original, it's all boring and generic. And whatever it does take from the original, it does it in just such a worst way. For example, the face coming out of the wall gag that was practical and looked amazing back in the day, they redid it here with some terrible CGI. Honestly, shame on you guys for having Rudy Mara star in this. In 7th place, I have Freddy vs. Jason. This was the first movie that I've ever seen with either Freddy or Jason, and all thanks to Bestie, but I don't think this is a good introduction. Granted, I haven't seen any of the Friday the 13th movies yet. Maybe that's a video I do next year. But anyways, the only saving grace for this movie is that it does have slight moments of wackiness. But the reason it ends up being so low is because it is afraid of being camp. It's annoying because you see the fun cheesiness just underneath the surface and sometimes bubbling up for a scene or two, but it seems like they were afraid that the audience would hate the movie if it did go full camp. And it's because of this that you see so many moments of them trying to be so self-serious that it just doesn't work at all. So when the film is having its own identity crisis and you also don't give me any characters to actually care about, I'm gonna check out. Really, all I was asking for is to just give me something to care about, and it couldn't do that because it felt like it had to do so many bland and mundane things. Coming in at 6th, I have A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child. This is the 5th film in the franchise, and the only reason it's this high up is because of Baby Freddy. Also, there's cool set pieces, but most of the movies have this, so it's not like it's a major positive thing. But getting back to Baby Freddy, who for no reason should exist in this, and it also doesn't make any sense in the lore, I'm still kind of glad he's there. And the rest of the film is just kind of meh and boring, so that's why I welcome Baby Freddy. Except for this one shot of Freddy having some choice words to his mom before he backs away in some smoke.
We'll see, bitch.
At the 5th slot, I have A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. 2 important things I remember from this movie: a dog literally pees fire, and 2, Freddy has the souls from his victims literally coming out of his body with makeup and prosthetics, and it's actually scarring. I don't even know if we can show you that footage here. Outside of that, there's not really much else to note, except for that one character who was previously played by Patricia Arquette being replaced by an actress called Tuesday Night, and I just think that's an interesting stage name. In the 4th slot, I have New Nightmare. This is the second of the 2 Wes Craven directed movies in this franchise, and it is also the biggest disappointment. It's really interesting to me how uninteresting this movie is, and then 2 years later, he comes out with his magnum opus that is Scream. And I will say it is cool that you do see the bubbling of his ideas that would be implemented into the Scream franchise, as this is much more of a test run. And there's a big part of me that's actually glad he made New Nightmare, so that way he was able to work out the rough kinks of the idea that would eventually become the Scream franchise. But my goodness, this was so disappointing because I was actually excited to see what Wes Craven could do with another movie in this franchise. Also, it's a bit weird because at times it's kind of pro running a franchise into the ground. I don't know. Overall, this movie just gave me a weird taste, and it goes to show you how not good of a franchise this is overall, that this is in this spot. But at least Wes Craven does try to do something with his characters, even though he massively fails. At number 3, I have A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. I gotta say, title's confusing. Who is he taking revenge on? No one's back from the first film except for Freddy, and also, he kind of wins at the end of the first one. The title for this sequel just doesn't make sense. Almost every other movie in this franchise, he would be taking revenge on somebody, but anyways, in this movie, you clearly see how the budget went up, and it's all on the screen, which I appreciate. And right from the beginning, seeing too, where the bus basically goes to hell. Also, there is this very interesting concept that isn't quite capitalized on, which is Freddy having this human servant for him to work through. And despite that concept and some fun kills, it's all kind of just bogged down by the execution of the movie overall to just be okay. It's definitely one of the least offensive sequels. I give it that. In second place, I have A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. This has the best kill in the entire franchise, and that is Welcome to Prime Time.
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
The kills in this movie are fun with some Mortal Kombat vibes, but overall you do grow some attachment to these characters. Even though a lot of them do still fall into the trap of, hey, this is their trauma, we're not going to really do anything with it except just kill him with it and give no character growth or any redemption whatsoever. Also gotta say, it was annoying how Lawrence Fishburne was on the poster for this on the streaming service I saw it on, and he's barely in this. Overall, this still does sadly miss on its full potential of what it could be, but at least this is one of the better times out of any of these movies. At number 1, I'm sure was obvious from the beginning, but I have A Nightmare on Elm Street. The original. The first one's the best one by a good margin. And I didn't want that to be the case. Not because this is a bad movie. No, it's good. But that means if it peaked so early on, there were 9 of these things. I had a rough time getting through this. So much of this franchise is just throwaway garbage. I'm only really gonna come back to this one. And if you haven't seen any of these movies, just watch this one. You'll be satisfied. You might be tempted to continue, but do it at your own risk. It's really that this movie knows its camp and it has fun with it, while still also giving some creative kills. And the other thing is too, this gives you the right amount of lore without giving you too much. It's satisfying for Freddy Krueger's sake, and you don't need to know any more. Of all the movies, this is the one that knows what it is and it does it well. Also, shout out to the song that plays during the credits. It's a nightmare, it's a dream. Those lyrics, so deep. But alright, those are my thoughts and rankings on the A Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Be sure to let me know your favorite down in the comments below. And go on our social medias and let me know which horror franchise should I tackle next. And if you made it this far into the video, please share it because I really went through torture watching all of these movies. But as always, thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Stay tuned for more Yeti Films content, and I'll catch you later.